largest feeding and breeding center for red-crowned crane. It is also a large educational base, and currently there are only 2,400 cranes of such kind. But here in Zhalong alone, we have 300 red-crowned cranes, making it the largest in the whole world.
您现在看到的是齐齐哈尔扎龙国家级自然。各位央视新闻的网友，大家好，我是央视新闻的记者任景。
Dear friends of the CJTN, you are now watching CJTN and its website. Where I am right now is at the Qiqihar Zhalong National Natural Protection Zone, and we are at the downstream of Ulua River. Through the video clip just now, I think you have all gained some understanding of Zhalong. From what I'm wearing, you can tell right here it's very cold, and here it's minus 15 degrees, but you feel very cold. You feel even colder, and you have to wear a hat, and it's already very chilly. But what about the cranes here? And the Zhalong Protection Zone was built 40 years ago, and here this is the first home that China has built for the cranes, and globally there are only 2,400 red-crowned cranes, but here alone we have 300 wild cranes. So it is the largest feeding and breeding base for wild cranes, and we are also artificially breeding red-crowned cranes, and we have artificially bred more than 1,000 cranes, and a lot of them are non-migrant birds. And as we are entering winter, the temperature is dropping, and how do those cranes survive winter? And that is why we are here. And you can see behind me there is a vast land, and you can see that the weeds are turning yellow. And so today we're going to take a look at those cranes. And first, let's take a look at some small cranes. I think you have all seen red-crowned cranes. If not in person, you must have met them on TV, and they got their name because they have a red crown. We are first going to present you some small cranes. Let's take a look at how they look like. Now from this side, you can see that we have an interviewee, and she is a breeder of those cranes, and she's also the mother of the crane. So we're now getting into winter, and I see you are wearing a lot of clothes. So how do you do with those cranes in winter? We have to consolidate the walls and fortress, and we have to add a lot of weeds so that they can be protected against the cold, and so we can get in. Perfect. So you have seen red-crowned cranes, but take a look at those crowns. These are in the color of brown, and which are quite different from the grown-up cranes. And you can see that they have laid a layer of weeds here and straw here, and this is simply for temperature purposes. You can regard it as a big bed, and which is very floppy, and it's very warm in winter for them. Here we have 50 to 60 small cranes. They have been raised here for 5 to 6 months. They're 5 to 6 months old. So this is like they are at kindergarten, and they have already started their training, and later I'm gonna bring them out and for them to fly into the sky because it's cold, and I have to stimulate their blood circulation to help them guard against cold, well, they look very timid with you because they have been bred by us, and they regard me as their mother, and that's why we feel very intimate with each other. And so they are playing with your hand. Yes. Well, the signal here may not be very well, but because we're at Zhalong and the signal is not quite ideal because this is a faraway place, and let's get out of here and move to somewhere else for better signal. And we have learned that these are 50 cranes at the kindergarten here, and you, Miss Xia, is the headmaster of the kindergarten, and now is the time for some after-class activity. And so Miss Xia is gonna bring us here, bring us out of this place, and take the cranes for some activities. If you listen carefully, you can hear the sound from those cranes and also from Miss Xia.
大家可以听到这个夏大姐口中不停地发出这个呼唤小鹤的声音。其实啊，夏大姐在这儿工作这么多
What
年，
you can now hear is the command sent out by Miss Xia. And Xia has been working here for decades, and she speaks this kind of language with those cranes. And you can now see these small cranes, they are holding out their wings and they are ready to fly. But you can also tell that these are not standard gestures, and some of them they failed. They did not take off because these are very young cranes. They are only 7 to 6 months old, and they are here studying at the kindergarten. And you say Miss Xia is running in front of them, and why? Because these small cranes they have to identify the direction of the wind by following the guidance of Miss Xia. And now you can see that this is the first time that they are doing, and now some of the small cranes are already flying high in the air, and they are circling around the wetland, and one white crane has already come back, and some of the cranes they do not have very perfect landing, and they have to retake off and then land it safely. Now you can see that Miss Xia is calling those cranes. You can see that these little cranes, they have finished one circle of flying, and they are right now in front of us. So maybe some of you have just tuned in of our program, and we are right now at the Zhalong Natural Protection Zone. We are taking a look at how those red-crowned cranes survived the winter, and now Xia is about to feed those cranes, and what's in her hand is small fishes, which is a favorite dish of those cranes. You can see that these cranes, they are competing for the feed, and how do they survive the winter? Well, in the cage, we see that they have added to the thickness of the wall, and they have also put a layer of wood and straw on the floor, and in Xia's words, and this is their very comfortable bed. And so what do you feed them in winter? And in winter, because these cranes, they are only 8 months old and they are not very capable out there in the wild, so they have to rely on human beings to feed them. And in particular, in winter, you have to add food so that they can store more energy in their body and they can survive the winter. And now you see some of the cranes, they are looking for food on the ground, and Xia is right now feeding them. And now later we're gonna have some conversation. And now Let's just give the time to Miss Xia and for her to feed those cranes. You may have a question, and this is such a close distance with the cranes. Are we affecting those cranes? Well, let me tell you, we have been approved. We are allowed to be in a crowd of the cranes, and actually those cranes, they're not afraid of people. And they have very strong curiosity with human beings, and they are very willing to maybe making some interaction with human beings. And this one is staring at the camera, and this one here is trying to untie my shoes, and they are very interested in the surrounding environment. Maybe some of you, this is your first time seeing the red-crowned cranes, but what we now see are some small cranes, and we have kept on seeing red-crowned, but look at these cranes, they are not red-crowned, and they are brown in color, and well, this is a process of growth and maturing. With time passing by, and when they grow into adults, they're gonna turn red in the crown. And Xia is carrying a bag of apple. Do they like apple? Yes, they love it. They love all types of fruits, apple, oranges, you name it. And we realized that they like it because when some of our colleagues are eating apples, and they would bark, they would shout out, and as if they are saying, "Come on, give us some apple. We want some apple too." And so that's why we bought some apples for them. How many years have you been working here? 14, 15 years, I guess. So you have been doing the job for these 14 years. Yes, I have been feeding small cranes. As we have learned that you have totally bred more than 1,000 cranes, and how many of the cranes have you personally fed? I think at least 500. I regard them as my children, and I spend more time with the cranes than my son. And my son is jokingly telling me that, well, when you grow old, these cranes can feed you. And well, I tell her that this is my job, and I'm doing this job for a living, and I love my job. It is my job. I love those cranes, and they're just like kids, and you treat them well, and then they're gonna be very nice to you. And if you play with them, they play with you. And when you walk, they just follow your steps, and it's just like playing with one another like friends, and we're like one family. And when I go to the canteen, some of them, they would follow me, and but they were not allowed in, and then some of you would just look into the canteen through the window, and then the staff working at the canteen, and they tell me, come on, bring your kids and get out of here. And they just give me this sort of jokes because they all regard those cranes as my kids. Well, sometimes you can even get a little bit angry, and when they are treated well, when they feel very comfortable, we all feel happy, and they actually determine our mood. And when they are good, and then we are, of course, in a good mood. Well, can I give them some apple? Yeah, let me give you a big one. Let me try if I can seduce some cranes. Wow, I cannot give you this whole apple here. You can see this small crane. Oh, it seems that I have to give her this whole half apple. Let me give you a smaller slice. Great. Well, these are just like small kids, and they... Well, let me try another one. You see, they're not afraid of human beings, and they want to get close to you, just like kids. You may ask, ordinarily, these are migrant birds, but they do not migrate. Yes, they are small and they have been here for a very long time. They have got accustomed to the cold weather, and if you want them to migrate to somewhere else, they don't know where to go, and they are too small. So these small cranes, as we know, we are located in a very cold area, and can they stand the cold? They are cold too, but they have this feather. They have this feather-made clothes. It doesn't matter, and when they feel cold with their palms, and they just put the palms in their belly and inside the leather feather, and so it's very clever. And we see there is a very thick layer of weight and straw, and of course, then they will find the very best place to stand against the cold. So what kind of training do you give to them? Well, in general, we give them a lot of trainings because if they don't do those exercises, they're gonna gain weight, they're gonna become fat, and they're gonna have very thick legs. So I have to walk them around. I have to let them fly a little bit every day, and it's just like look at their legs, and this is just like bamboos. These are not like any animal leg or human leg, and you have to make sure that they can gain some weight, but in the meantime, they do not gain so much fat. Well, this crane is stealing your food away. Well, not necessary actually. I can give you one. Well, this crane, she was actually trying to steal two slices of apple out of the notice of Miss Xia. So maybe some of you have just tuned in, and you are now watching a live broadcast at the Zhalong wetland, which is a national natural protection land. And here in this space, we have roughly 300 wild cranes, and globally we only have 2,400. So the Zhalong protection base has the largest number of wild cranes, and also here we are artificially breeding red-crowned cranes, and now the figure has stabilized at 480, and this is the most important breeding base of red-crowned cranes, and this is the first part of our program, and we are mainly focused at those small cranes, and this is minus 15 degrees here. We are wearing very thick clothes, but still we feel very cold. But can those small cranes survive this winter? And if so, if they can, how do they survive the winter? And now we're going to take a closer look. If you have been watching our program over the past 20 years, and you see that these cranes, they live in the cages, and inside the cage we have a very thick layer of weeds and straws, and they will have a very comfortable winter there in the cage. And Miss Xia is also feeding them with apples, and because in the winter the temperature is dropping and they have to store their energy, and this crane is having some interaction with the camera. And you may ask, why are these cranes not having a red crown? Well, let me tell you, these are still young cranes. They were born this year, and they are only 8 months old, and they are like the children. And so when they grow up, their head may turn into red color. This is just very lovely and adorable, and they are very curious about the surrounding environments. These are very lively and lovely, and so that is why when human beings are here, they're not afraid of us, and they make a lot of exercises in flying.
但是我们一会儿的这个画面呢会改善。
This is an online streaming, but the signal may not be very ideal. We're gonna improve that in a while. So we have interviewed Miss Ya, and is this for me or for the Greens? Well, good. You can see that they are eating the apple in my hand, and one of them is very interested in my shoelace. Well, I do feel very privileged, surrounded by those birds. Well, this is like a kindergarten with 50 students, and these students, they need a headmaster. Who is the headmaster? She's Xia Yanhui. She's like the mother of these cranes, and she has been working here for more than 15, 14 years, and she regards these birds as her kids. And if you want to know more about her story, and you can go back to our public accounts, and you can take a look at our previous interviews with Miss Ya.
顶鹤呢，其实属于世界濒危物种，目前全世界的种群数量不超过3000只啊。为了保证丹顶鹤的种群稳定呢，扎龙国家级自然保护区每年都会人工繁育一批丹顶鹤，经过野化后再放飞。那么从1979年起呢，这里一共是人工繁育了800多只丹顶鹤。从这些小鹤破壳而出开始哈，就是保护区的饲养员们一直在陪着它们。那下面呢，我们就一起去扎龙看一看这些鹤妈妈。
wild cranes, and now I'll bring you to Zhalong, and let's take a look at the feeders. How do they feed them? And one of the feeders is Xia Yanhui, and let's take a look at her life with those small birds. Each day in the morning, Xia is gonna bring those 60 cranes in a wild exercise. And in summer, they have 4 exercises every day. In winter, they have 2. And they take this as snacks. And the birds, they eat everything. And they eat frogs. They eat dragonflies and even those insects in the wild. And now we don't have those. And they will catch some small fish in the pond. And each and every day, and they have to eat 1 kilo of fish, and it's just like our kids, and they eat a lot. Just eat it. So when they are fat, they will do some exercises, which is flying training, and if it is a wild bird, then they have their parents to teach them. Within only 2 to 3 months, they will learn how to fly. But when they are taken care of by a human being, they have to spend longer. And according to Xia, when they first came, she didn't know anything about birds, and she learned 3 months from her masters. And every crane, they are different, and you have to use different sound. You have to use different sound, and it's as if you're telling them that there is food here and come to your mother. And so here we have 4 feeders like Xia, and they are like the parents of these birds. And when they are 1 year old, they will be put in the wild for another training. And these feeders, they will welcome another batch of birds. And this is from last year. Here, come here. Can they catch something to eat here? Do you have some fish here? No, you cannot use your hand. Don't touch her because you're gonna break their feather. I know her. I raised her up for 11 years. Xia has fed 400 artificially bred
我们说呢，扎
red-crowned
龙国区从
cranes.
1976年筹建之初就开始了丹顶鹤的人工的驯养。
From 1976, when it was originally built, the Zhalong base has long been feeding and breeding red-crowned cranes. As of 2015, they have totally bred 900 wild cranes, and the success rate is nearly 90%. And the success rate for artificially breeding exceeded 95%, which is something unimaginable. Then what is the secret behind this? And this is a 3-day-old crane, and this is the last crane artificially bred for this year. And each and every day, I'm in charge of their sleeping, eating, everything. I have to take care of their fecal sludge. I have to ask myself, are they fed well? Are they playing well? Well, honestly, I'm dedicating more to these birds than to my children. And whenever Xia comes into the cage, and these birds, they're gonna surround her up, fighting for food. In addition to their daily life, Xia has to take care of their safety and their feelings. And when you are sleeping, when you hear these birds shouting, you have to quickly get up and come to the cage. You have to touch them, and they feel that they feel safe, and then they slowly quiet down and calm down. So each and every day, Xia brings these cranes to the wild for some trainings, and they follow Xia to wherever she goes. When Xia is on a boat, these birds just swim in the pond. So what is this sound? I'm asking them to come back because we have some food here. So you have to tease these birds as if you're teasing a child. Well, bringing these birds on exercise, after a while, she has to make sure that these are exactly the same number, no one is missing. And because sometimes when I bring them out, there are also some other animals out there, and you have to make sure that these cranes, they do not get hurt, do not get eaten up by some other animals. And so naturally I count the head, and I make sure that they are all with me. And Xia also trains those birds how to fly, and when they are purely wild animals, they will learn how to fly within 3 months. But with Xia, they have to spend a little bit longer time, which is 4 months. Xia has personally fed and trained 500 cranes. What is the moment when you feel most satisfied? I think it's in October, when all the cranes that they are able to fly into the sky, when they can fly freely. That is the most beautiful moment in my life. So Xia is getting along very well with those cranes. Welcome back. Now take a look at this. Well, this is one of the cranes who is very interested in my shoelace. These are just like kids. They are very curious about anything. And they are not afraid of human beings. Look at this bird, and she's playing with my hand. And through the video clips, you now know a little bit more about Miss Xia. So Miss Xia is getting along very well with these birds, and she takes care of them from the very beginning when they were delivered from the egg, and then from like 2 months old and all the way to present. And Xia's children, they are having some arguments inside the family, and because they are complaining that she does not spend much time with her family. Well, my children, they are becoming more and more understandable to my job, because they also fall in love with these birds, and they take very good care of these birds as well. So your husband is also working here, right? Yes, and the three of us, we are all working in this place. And well, I'm like the headmaster of the kindergarten, and my husband is teaching in a high school, and he makes sure that these birds learn some tangible skills, and so they will graduate in March next year. They have to increase their exercises, and they have to get accustomed to the world. I am actually preparing those crane for their future, and by April next year, I will welcome in another batch of small cranes. At the very beginning, you will feel very boring and monotonous, and there is no people here. We are not allowed to get in touch with the local tourists because this is a protection zone. So we try to reduce our contact with people from the outside. It doesn't matter to me personally, but it will matter significantly to those birds. We have to make sure that we do not carry in any foreign objects or foreign bacteria. Well, these cranes, they are very beautiful. They look like goddesses. Well, let me tell you that we are approved by the Natural Protection Zone, but in reality, these birds, they are not afraid of human beings. And when they spend a long time with human beings, then they get very spontaneous interacting with human beings, and then they regard human beings as something that is safe because we feed them, we play with them, and then they just drop their precaution and they get very relaxed in front of human beings. So they get along very well with human beings, but in a future stage, they are going to be trained to be more wild. Well, see, let's take a look at her legs, and she's wearing a band. Well, she started wearing this band from the very beginning of her birth, and this is like her ID. And by simply looking at the band, we would know where she came from. She's wearing a red band. It means that she is from the Zhalong base, and you can take a look at the number 0452, which is the postal number of Heilongjiang province. So from each band, we can know when the bird was born, where she came from, what kind of medical record she's having. It's just like the ID card. And because the ID card can tell you where you are from, everything, and it's just like an ID card of human being. So Xia likes to use analogies. So this one, the head is turning a little bit red. Does this mean that she's slightly older? Yes, and she's 6 months old, and you can see that the head is a little bit red, and it's slightly red. This shows that she is slightly older than the other crane. So we have a question from the audience, and when do they turn red completely? Well, you have to wait for 3 years. Well, it changes gradually, and just like this one, and at the very beginning, it's only a small area of red, and then gradually, the red color expands to the whole head, and with the passage of time, with them maturing and getting older, and then after 3 years, they turn into red in the head. So when they are fully red, it means that they have matured and they can breed their next generation. So as we have just learned that Xia and her husband and their their son, they have all been working here. Is this very typical here? Not really, and we do have father and son working here, but not quite typical for my situation where a whole family is working here. But here in this region, we have a lot of people engaged in the protection of cranes, and so we just learned a little bit about how Xia communicates with the birds, and we have to tell you more about it. And when we talk about crane, there is a story about, there is a song called A Real Story, and this is a song actually commemorating the first generation of crane feeders, and the first generation is the first generation of feeders and breeders. Then they surnamed the Xu, and some of them, they have dedicated their whole life to the protection of the cranes. It seems just like that. I'm not a good singer, but this is a song known to every household in China, and it tells the story of Xu Xiujuan, the very first generation of crane feeder. And now we're going to take a look at another video clip telling you the story of the first generation of feeder, the Xu family. So Heilongjiang is a precious land for natural resources protection. We have Daxing'an Mountain, and Xiaoxing'an Mountain we have tigers there and cranes there, and so they do have a lot of resources which are worth of our very careful protection. And the numbers we have just outlined, they are a result of generations of dedication. And now let's take a look at a real story taking place there.
这首歌名为《一个真实的故事》，在上个世纪80年代被广为传
This
唱。
song, named A
歌中
True
那个丹顶
Story,
鹤结痂不解
was
之缘的
very
女孩
popular in the
名叫徐秀娟。
1980s,
1981年，
and the
17岁的
girl
她进入扎
is
龙保护
called
区，
Xu
像她的父
Xiujuan
母
in
一样成为营
1981.
养特工。
At only 17
2
years
年后，
old,
她负责饲养的
and
雏
she
鹤
entered
生活率
into
达到
Zhalong, and like
为了
her
更好的
father,
工
she
作，
became
她
a
自费到
feeder,
了美
and
职
2
业大学
years
学习。
later, the
毕业
success
后，
rate
怀
of
揣3 枚
the
丹顶鹤蛋，
cranes
前
that
往
she
新疆
fed
江
reached
苏盐城国家
100%,
自然保
and
护区工
then
作。
she studied at the Northeastern Forestry University to study, and then she worked in Jiangsu. My father established Zhalong, and maybe my daughter can create some different base in Jiangsu, and maybe we can create a family
1987年秋天，
species
徐秀
of
娟为了寻找2只白天鹅，
crane.
不幸溺水
The
牺牲。
father never
年仅
anticipated
23岁。
that
徐秀娟牺牲
his
后，
daughter's
了解
life
女儿
would
的父
end
亲，
there,
把她的
and
骨灰留
in
在盐城，
1983,
让女儿能够和她
when
养
she
大的
was
小鹤在
searching
一起。
for 2 cranes, and she lost her
徐秀娟的
life
突然
in the
离世，
wild,
给一家
and
人带来了巨大的
Xu's
伤痛。
father made the decision to bury her in Jiangsu locally. So after the accident, I have never read one single letter written by her, and I don't even listen to the song. And I put her photo down in a family. Well, these 2 cranes, they were raised by my daughter. So whenever I go there, when the cranes came to me, it's just like my daughter coming to me, and it seems
这一
that
家人和丹顶
my
鹤的
daughter
故事
is
没
inside
有因为
them.
徐秀娟的牺牲而终止。徐秀娟牺牲后，原本可以留在部队
Well,
工作的
their
弟弟
love
徐
with
建峰
cranes
决
did
定
not stop
转业回
with
到
the
扎龙，
passed away of
到
Xu
鹤类驯养
Xiujuan,
繁育中心
and
工作。
Xu Xiujuan's brother also joined the base as a job, and
扎龙有着世界上最大的鹤类
Xu's
驯养繁育中
brother
心，
is telling me
承担着
that
为濒危的
now
野
my
生丹顶
sister
鹤
is not
输
there,
送健
but
康种群的
I'm
任务。
there. And this is a very important base, and this base carries the responsibility of cultivating and increasing the number of red cranes. And Xu Jianfeng, in 1990s, she came back to Zhalong and she discovered one egg. In order to guarantee the security of the egg, and he also got drowned in the water and sacrificed his life, like his daughter. This is the interview with him while he was still alive. My biggest wish is to get some funding support, and I want to get to know better about their life of the cranes, and he didn't achieve his dream. And in 2014, he was writing a letter, and he suddenly passed away. And Xu Zhuo is the daughter of Xu Jianfeng, and when her father passed away, and she was a sophomore at a northeastern university, in order to carry on the mission of her father, and she studied animal care, and she got the opportunity to enroll as a postgraduate free of examination, but she gave up this opportunity and she took up the job as a crane protector in Zhalong. And at Zhalong, she could hear the story of her parents and grandparents. Once we had a crane transported from the United States, and the crane didn't eat anything for one day, and so she was just staying there, staring at the crane, and when the crane finally started eating, she burst into tears. I think she is treating the cranes like she's treating with her own family, and I only stayed in my home for 3 days at the Spring Festival, and at Yancheng, my grandfather is urging me to come back because he's worried of some uncertainties. And now she is actively engaging in international communication, and she is carrying forward the mission of her family. I want to write a story, and I'm doing the same job, and as if my parents are still here. Well, this song tells the sacrifice and dedication of our family. And the first generation of the family dedicated their whole life to Zhalong. The second generation sacrificed their life, and the third generation of Xu family will still be here, witnessing the future of Zhalong. The first generation, the whole lifetime. The second generation of people, they sacrificed their life, and the third generation of people is still dedicated to this mission. And this is what a story. And I personally have witnessed the ecological changes in Zhalong. There are actually a lot of stories, and in Heilongjiang, the people there, they have this great persistence and perseverance, and this is exactly the spirit that we need, this nation needs, in order to protect our environment. So, dear friends, welcome back. My name is Ren Qiuyu. I'm a journalist from CGTN. We are now in a live broadcast. I am at the Zhalong Wetland National Protection Zone, and you can follow our camera. These are the weeds surrounding me, and as we are entering winter, these weeds, they are turning yellow, and still they are very beautiful. And this is the first national level protection zone for red-crowned cranes. And here we have 300 cranes, but globally we only have 2,400 cranes. So this is the largest feeding and breeding center in the world for red-crowned cranes. Here in total we have fed and bred more than 1,000 cranes, and for artificial breeding the number has reached 480, which is a gigantic number. So we have played a couple of video clips, and from these video clips and from my interviews, you know a little bit about what is this place. And now let's move forward and let's see when the cranes reach 8 months old, and they will be transferred to a different place. So I'm sniffing because this is minus 15 degrees here, and I feel very cold and chilly, and I'm wearing very thick clothes, but still it's very cold out here. And so how do those birds survive the winter here? Let's bring you there and see how they survive the winter. We have seen a cage. The cage is consolidated in order to guard against the chilly weather in winter. We saw a very thick layer of weed and straw, and because they are still very young and they are not able to fetch food from the wild, and that is why we have a human headmaster of the kindergarten who is leading the cranes for our birds. And so we're gonna play a due picture on the screen, and we're gonna show you how these birds, they get trained in flying and they get exercise in the wild. And this is very important because they have to learn how to fly, but because they are very young, they're not very good at it, and they have to follow a human instructor. They have to identify the direction of the wind, and they may not succeed with one shot, and they may not succeed in taking off and landing with one shot, but they have to repeat. And in Xia's words, this is just like a kindergarten, and when they are 8 months old, they have to be transferred to actually here. And what we now see is only a platform, and there are also a lot of people waiting here. They are waiting for something. What are they waiting for? And they are waiting for the wild training of the cranes. So it is here in a few minutes that some cranes, they will be set free into the wild for training. And right in front of me there is the mound, on top of which we have a semi-wild crane. And later I'm going to explain to you what is the semi-wild crane. So in front of us we have a stream, and in spring and autumn and summer it's flowing, and so people would just stand here, and the cranes, they are in a river, and they can have a close contact with human beings, and this is very good for training and education purposes of animal protection. And the mother of all these birds, well, by mother I'm actually using an analogy, and Xia is there waiting for us, and we're gonna follow her steps. We're gonna travel across the river and take a look at what is happening there. So here we see Mr. Wang Zhao. So Mr. Wang is having a different job from Xia. Xia is like teaching the kindergarten students. What about you? I'm in charge of the juvenile stage. So at the juvenile stage, they tend to form their own characteristics. Is that also true for birds? Yes. It is here that they get along and get accustomed to nature. They learn how to find food in the wild. So the training starts at 3 o'clock. It's 2:50. So can we walk there and take a look? All right, let's follow the steps of Wang Zhao and take a look at the birds on the other side. And I have to tell you that this is specially approved by the Zhalong base, so we are allowed to do so. I don't know how many of you are from the southern part of China. I don't know what clothes you are wearing, what temperature you are having, but look at this stream, and it's totally frozen, and you can walk on it. And the external, so our cameraman has to walk very slowly. So the temperature here is 15 degrees minus, and Wangzhou is wearing even more clothes than me. So is this the normal amount of clothes that you're wearing? Yes, because this is actually 2 to 3 degrees colder or lower than the weather forecast. And according to Xia, the small birds, they are less immune to the cold, and so the winter is coming. Is it better and relatively easier for those juvenile cranes? They are a lot better than those young and small cranes. In the winter, we have a cage for them, and we also put a layer of weights and straw on the ground. Well, basically, you're taking the same measures for winter. Are you feeding them differently? We will throw some food out there regularly, like corns and feeds. And they need a lot of corns, and we have to increase a lot of fat and protein input. So at Xia's place, and she feeds them directly with her hand. What about you here? So here we have artificially bred cranes, and we also have semi-wild cranes. So we simply put the feed in one fixed place, and for the birds to find it. So how are you feeding this group of cranes? Well, there are two ways, and you can either add the feed in the cage, you can add some corns and vegetables and grass, because in the summer, they can eat a lot of insects and fish in the wild. They can also taking a lot of grass. In winter, we don't have those food out there. And we also have some semi-wild cranes, which is right over there. Well, when they have reached the age, they are put in the wild, and they are able to find food in the summer out there. But in winter, they would come back, and we give them some food at regular places. Also, are those one family? Yes, they are a family of 3. So you may ask, how do you distinguish a family of crane? Well, cranes, they are not just living a long life, and they only have one spouse for their lifetime, and they never separate one another. And when we see a group of 3, it's parents and one child. And when you see 4 cranes, and definitely it's the parents and 2 children. So when they have reached the age, they will find their mates, and it's always 2 cranes. So look at these 3 cranes, and one of them is not having a red head, and so they are one family, and this small crane is their child. And so this small crane is like semi-wild, and in the summer they live out there in the wild, and in the winter they would come back to this region because they have gotten accustomed to this place, and this is like their home. And when they encounter some difficulties out there, they're gonna come back for comfort. So this is the board that you mentioned, and are you sure that they're gonna fall? They're not gonna fall when there is strong wind? Yes, and we have consolidated this board wall, and we also have prepared a layer of weight. Well, this is slightly thinner than the kindergarten. Yeah, you have to regularly change the floor, and when it's wind, they get wet, so you have to change them. Well, these cranes, they are some sort of aggressive animals, and for the small cranes, we can get very close to them. But here, what are the age groups? So they are in 4 different age groups, and these birds, and they are born in 2014, and they are almost adults. And we also have birds here born in 2016 and 2017. So according to Xia, when they reach 8 months old, then they have to be transported here. So you do some additional training? Yes. The older birds, then they will be transported to somewhere else, and they will find their mates. And if they have found their mates, we can put them in a wild, and we can also put them in a breeding center for them to breed their next generation. So one of the friends is asking, are those is that bird gone wild alone? No, and he is a semi-wild bird, and you can see she's having a red head, and she's growing up, and she wants to live in a wild, and she wants to maybe find his own mate. So we respect her choice, his choice, and they can find a mate. They can give birth to a small bird, and this is what we call it's a semi-wild. And how long does this process take? Well, for this process, we are very mature actually, and it takes a very long time, because after generations of breeding, gradually they will find it difficult to go back to the wild. Well, it requires many generations of efforts, and when we have more and more wild animals, wild birds, and they will gradually go back to the wild. And so are you getting ready for the Into the Wild training? All right, and let's invite our cameraman to come back here and to go to the other side of the river and get ready for the training. I have actually come here for quite a number of years, and I think it's very beautiful, in particular when the cranes hold out their wings wide open in the air, and it's such a beautiful feeling. What is your take on this? Well, I have been seeing this too much, and I think cranes are very beautiful, and they look very elegant. The way they walk, the way they fly are quite different from other birds. When they fly, it's very beautiful and very elegant. In the legends, cranes, they are recognized as a fortune bird, and they represent also beauty, longevity, and love. So it's quite suitable for the aesthetic appreciation of Orientals. So this is open for the public, because we want to use this activity as the public training and education opportunity. And each and every day we train the birds, and when the cranes, they walk, when they fly, they are very beautiful, and they naturally attract a lot of visitors. And this is also a publicity activity, and we have to rely on human efforts to protect the birds. Now you can take a look at those birds, and the exercises have begun. You can see how beautiful they are in the air, and these are not like the small kids flying like they stumble as they are learning how to walk and fly. And this grown up cranes, they are flying in such a very elegant manner. And today's weather is also very good, and you can see some cloud out there. So one of the friends is asking, are those trainings regular at certain time? Yes, and in the morning we have one training. In the afternoon we also have one training. That's for winter. But in summer we have 4 trainings every day. Wow, that's beautiful.
其实我们可以看到啊，就在我们摄像老师旁边这有一个牌子，写的是游客指路禁止种类，是因为这个地方是。
Beside our cameraman, we have a signage warning visitors not to get across because originally, let's say in summer, it's actually a river. But here in winter it's frozen up, and we have one visitor standing in a stream, but this is not appropriate. And despite the fact that this area is open for the visitors, but we have to make sure that there is the distance between human beings and the birds. Our purpose is for people to know more about the birds, not disturbing those birds. So if you come here one day, make sure that you follow the rules and you respect the birds. Well, where are you from? Well, I'm from Xiamen. I'm here for the birds. Why do you come here? I was here on a business trip, and so I thought at best, take this tour. Have you seen this in TV? No, I read it from some magazines, and the cranes, they impress me like they are from the legends, and it's like flying high in the air, and there is a god or goddess on her back. Good, have a nice time here. So in winter, we have fewer people because it's very cold, and in summer, the crowd would be a lot bigger. A lot of the families, they bring their friends, they bring their kids here for the wild training of the crane. And after a moment of flying, they are here finding food. And when it is in summer, actually in the stream there are a lot of fish, and they can find fish here. And now it's in winter, and our feeder is actually throwing food to them. So when those cranes, they swing their wings, and they also tease each other and play around with each other. And cranes, when they get mature, when they get to a certain age, they can become a little bit aggressive, and but most of the times they are very peaceful with one another. So we still have some visitors stepping on the ice, and I have to remind you that we are here to protect the cranes, not disturbing them. And also some of the birds, they are very aggressive, and they have this great sense of territory, and so make sure that we are not offending them. Well, maybe some of you have only tuned in just now. What you are now seeing is a live broadcast about cranes in Zhalong Protection Zone in Heilongjiang. We have actually been broadcasting for 1 hour, and standing on my side is one gun, and so you send out a sound. What is that? Well, I'm giving them a signal to encourage them to fly more. Can you try that again? Can I do that again so that we can all hear it again? So this is, of course, long-time training, right? Because these birds, they are ready, got very accustomed to this sound. So when we want them to fly, we use one tone, and when we want them to eat, and we give them another sound. So they know when to fly, when to come back, and when to eat. So Xia, her son, he's working here? Yes. And also we have this legendary family who has dedicated to birds protection for 3 generations. And this is quite an impressive story. And so this base we have successfully cultivated 300 red-crowned cranes. And I have heard that this into the wild training, although that some of them are still non-migrant birds, but yeah, when they reach certain age, they can become semi-wild, and they can turn 100% wild, and they will go to the wild, and they will find a mate from the wild, and if they have a mate with the crane from the wild, and then their next generation would truly be regarded as the wild red-crowned crane. As we have elaborated that each crane is wearing a band on their leg. It's just like a band, like an ID card, and it tells us where you are from. And so in Pangu and in Jiangsu, we have identified cranes wearing band actually from this place, and it's so long a distance, and this tells us that the training, the into the wild training, is very successful. And they have a very strong sense of territory, and for example, the couple standing there, they regard that territory as their own, and they would become aggressive if they approach them. And because they have been doing activities there for a very long time, and they would naturally regard the land as their own territory. So, because they have been living in the wild for a very long time, and they very much want to protect their land. So one of the birds is getting aggressive right now. I want to thank you, Wang Gang, for letting us see such beautiful picture. One of the friends is asking online, what if it snows winter? So they are actually very immune to the cold and chilly weather, and they can stand against the cold. And in winter, the cold weather is not a threat to them, but still we have to build some infrastructure for them. And so in winter, when it gets too cold, but it doesn't get cold all of a sudden, and it gets cold and colder gradually, so they can get accustomed to that change of temperature, and it's a slight change, steady change, and they can get accustomed to the change of the temperature. So I would say this is like a special species here. Well, this is like free activity, free after-class activity. All right, thank you very much for introducing to us this part of the training. Thank you very much. Sorry, I'm trembling with my hand. It's so cold here. Thank you very much. Also say goodbye to our friends online. So we have been broadcasting for 1 hour. What you now see is a live broadcast in Zhalong Nature Protection Base, and as we said that globally we have only 2,400, but here alone we have more than 300, and this is the largest training and breeding base of red-crowned cranes, and Zhalong was originally built in 1979 at the very beginning of the opening up and reform policy. At that time, China was very backward and very poor, but we stepped up with protection and regulation, and we started to engage in birds protection, and the crane birds that you now see is a result of many generations of hard work and efforts, and we have at least 3 generations of people dedicated to the protection of these birds, and some of them have put all their life in this, some even sacrificed their lives, and we have played some clips in this program, and this is a live broadcast in a world at a temperature of -15 degrees, but we feel very warm in the bottom of our hearts. And we see there are also some other people watching those birds, and I am telling myself that one day when I become a father, I will bring my children here. I will bring them close and animate to nature. I believe that this relationship can go on forever. So if you have a chance, please come here to Qiqihar to get close to nature. Well, this is the end of today's program. Thank you very much for watching.